everyone, and welcome to the July 1st edition of Hangout for Hope, your spiritual pick-me-up that's just the right amount of time for this moment in time. Honestly, I can't believe that it's already July the 1st. I mean, we are officially into the second half of 2020. We're over the hump. We're over the hill. And let's just hope that the second half of the year is much better than the first half. This year, this first half, has been unlike what many of us have seen before. Today, July 1st, we are 183 days into this year. And so far, we've seen some crazy things. I mean, we've seen the coronavirus making us shelter in place. We've seen George Floyd and his murder, that led to the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement. Even here at Advent ELC, we've had our first and hopefully only drive-in Easter and Pentecost services. And let's not forget, 2020 also has brought us Prince Harry and Meghan Markle announcing that they're stepping down from their duties as senior royals in Buckingham Palace. It's been a crazy year for sure. And in a time like this, as in many other times, it's important to remember that you are not alone. God is with you. And part of my mission, part of our mission as a church, part of this program as Hangout for Hope is to remind you of the good news that God is near. And to help us see God in our midst tonight, I am excited to have on our show University pastor Drew Tucker, who is from the Capital University and Trinity Lutheran Seminary. He's got a wonderful message for us from 1 Kings. He's also brought along a couple students from Trinity Lutheran Seminary at Capital University to bring us God's message in song. I'm very excited personally because two of the singing students are my past students from my teaching days at Capital University when I taught youth ministry there. They are stellar students, and I can tell you that they have a heart for God. So I'm so glad you tuned in, because you tuned in on the right night, because tonight's Hangout for Hope is not one that you would have wanted to miss. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Restore every heart that is
It's now my pleasure to introduce to you University Pastor Drew Tucker. Here's a fun fact. I actually served on his call committee. He was called to serve Capital University and Trinity Lutheran Seminary in 2017. Pastor Drew has worked on college campuses and student affairs and in the classroom as an adjunct professor. He's also been the lead pastor at Christ Lutheran Church in Radford, Virginia, and a curriculum contributor for the ELCA, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and also for Generation Now Disciples. And he's a contributing author for Augsburg Fortress. So, without further ado, I introduce to you Pastor Drew.
Hello, everybody. My name is Drew Tucker. I'm the university pastor at Capital University and Trinity Lutheran Seminary, and I'm so glad to be with y'all for this Hangout for Hope at Advent Lutheran Church. Thanks to Pastor Aaron for inviting me to be a part of this ministry with you all. As he described it, this is a time for a midweek spiritual pick-me-up to recenter on Jesus, to look for what God's up to and inspiring some hope in the midst of this continued season of COVID-19. So, of course, I thought, what better book to read a little bit out of for a spiritual pick-me-up and hope than 1 Kings. I love the Hebrew Bible and the prophets, and this is a story about a prophet in 1 Kings, because I think in the challenges that the prophets bring to us, we actually find a lot of hope. We find a lot of energy, of vibrance, of possibility, but sometimes we fear that judgment or that condemnation even can be the antithesis of hope. And in fact, what we find in the prophets, what we find in the Hebrew Bible is that judgment is sometimes God's word of good news for those who have been oppressed, those who have been abandoned by society, those who have been downtrodden and left asunder. But this particular story is not about those things. It's about a prophet's encounter with God specifically, and I just love the way that it turns around our perspective on where should we be looking for God, and for us then, where should we be looking for hope? So, I read to you from 1 Kings chapter 19. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." So the Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting the mountains and breaking the rocks into pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of sheer silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood before the entrance of the cave. There came a voice to him that said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Here ends the reading. We often look for God in the biggest places, the most extravagant and obvious signs of divine presence, of God's movement. Often we say, "Lord, just show me a sign." And we're hoping for like neon lights. We're hoping maybe for the obvious lottery ticket win. Maybe we're hoping for someone to say the words to us that we've always wanted them to say, but never had the courage to ask. And Elijah gets none of that. Zero. Nothing. Because there is a great wind, a hurricane it seems, and God's not in the hurricane. There's an earthquake, literally reshaping the ground beneath his feet, and God's not in the earthquake, and then a fire, and God's not in the fire, but God is in the sound of sheer silence. The apparent nothingness is where Elijah finds God. How much of our lives lately have felt like apparent nothingness? Working from home, schools from home, vacations canceled, sports leagues canceled. All of the plans that we had have changed. So much of our summers have come to nothing. But what if that's exactly where God is? What if that's precisely where Jesus is showing up for us? Not in the great, extravagant, wondrous things, but in the apparent absence. Luther talked about the theology of the cross being God showing up in the places where it seems God is least expected or even least appropriate. After all, how could God show up in crucifixion? What sense does it make that God's only Son would die that way? And yet it's precisely there in self-sacrifice, in selflessness, that God shows up. Because God's not where we expect God to be, but instead in the places that seem least likely for a holy presence. So I love the prophets. I love the prophets because they help us to see God showing up in difficult, challenging, unexpected, and yet beautiful, holy ways. I love Elijah because Elijah has a heart for God. Elijah has seen destruction all around his community. He feels like the only prophet left in all of Israel. And what does he do but still seek the Lord? I'm not saying that's easy. None of this was easy for Elijah. But I am saying it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. So friends, keep your eyes peeled because God is boundless. God is showing up in the places we expect God never to be. Jesus will show up in the places you least think could be holy. That's such good news. So I hope that you will find just a bit of hope in that today. That God's presence with you is there. It just may not be where you expect it to be with you. So look in the sounds of sheer silence and see what it is that God is up to. Blessings to you. My prayers are with you and all at Advent. May God be with you until we meet again.
All this pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder if my life could really change at all. All this earth, could all that is lost ever be found? Could a garden come up from this ground at all? You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. All around, hope is springing up from this old
Well, that's it for this July 1st edition of Hangout for Hope. I pray that this was just the spiritual pick-me-up you needed, that was just the right amount of time for this moment in time. Join us in the upcoming weeks ahead as we have Pastor Grant Eckert from Jacob's Porch from The Ohio State University. We also have past Advent ELC student and current Zanesville intern Robert Eller on as well. Remember, in-person worship at Advent ELC starts back this Sunday, and VBS is happening this month as well. For all the news and notes you need on those things and more, you can go to one place, adventelc.org. So until next time, this is Pastor Aaron Lane reminding you to take care and to give care in the name of the one from whom all blessings flow. Have a great rest of your week.